Hey there, Nick Jatakis here. In this video, we're going to go over how to create nested default variable values in a shell script. Now that's kind of a mouthful, but it is a nice way to improve the developer experience when writing command line tools because it gives users options on, how they might want to define certain values. For example, Docker Compose is a great example of this one when it comes to the project name. And now this video is not going to be specific to Docker Compose, but yeah, let's just run over a quick use case here on how Docker Compose uses this, and then we'll go off and write our own code in a shell script to see how we can replicate that behavior. So yeah, in this case, Docker Compose, you can set this thing called a project name, and you can either do --project name or -p for short here. For example, when you run any Docker Compose command, you can do something like project name hello, and then you can run your up command or your build command or whatever it happens to be here. And again, if you're not familiar with Docker Compose, that's okay. But there's another way to set this project name as well. For example, you can set an environment variable. So you can do Docker Compose project like this, and then you can do your Docker Compose up here, and that is going to work just the same here. Your project name would be whatever this environment variable is set to. Now, typically, if you have something like a .env file created, then you can define this environment variable in that .env file so that you can just run Docker Compose up without needing to set this environment variable. That's typically what I do here. So that's two different ways you can set the project name. However, if you run something like a Docker Compose up like this and you don't have an env file with this environment variable, maybe you didn't export it to your shell, and then you also didn't use the project name or -p flag here, then Docker Compose will default to looking at your current working directory path here and just grab the base name, which in this case would be arg values here. It's the last part of the path here. So, Docker Compose gives you three different ways to set that project name. And, if you don't set it, then it defaults to using this. But if you set it for the, with the environment variable, it's going to use that. And if you set it with command line flag, then it is going to use this. And if you happen to set something like the environment variable and the flag, then the flag is going to win. So you as a developer now have many different ways to control how you want to do that. And that's pretty nice here because, maybe you do have a .env file and this project is defined like this, but maybe you're just tinkering or playing around with some other script that might be using Docker Compose or whatever, and you just want to very quickly use a different project name, you can just pass in the flag here to override what's in the env file to test whatever you need to test. Basically, you have a whole bunch of different flexibility here. So yeah, let's go over how we can do this in a shell script here. I'm just going to make a new script here, call it demo, and we can just run this and we get a hello world here. So if we go and take a look here at this demo script, all it does, it just echoes hello world for now. But yeah, let's go and start playing around with this a little bit. So let's start by echoing something like project name, and then we'll need to define this variable up here. So let's go with project name, and just for now, let's just go with hello, right? Literally a hard-coded string here. Let's make sure that our script works before we actually do anything real here. So cool. Now let's say we want a dynamic project name, right? So we can always just read from $1 here, which is going to read in the first argument that we pass in. In this case, we're not going to be worrying about using a command line flag like -- project name. Let's just go with, passing it in as a first argument like this. And if you run the script, then nice, it's echoing the project name like this. And if we don't put in anything, then we're actually going to get an error from bash here, unbound variable here, because no unset is set here. So it's not going to allow empty variables here. But if we set a default here to be empty, then that is going to be okay. And now literally project name is going to be, like an empty string or essentially unset. And yeah, this is how you can set a default value with a variable like this. And in this case, maybe we can just set a hard-coded string. So we just do something like cool. So now if we don't pop in any argument here, then it's going to default to cool. But of course, of course, we can always just put in whatever name that we want here. And this is sort of the pattern that we're going to use here, but we can take this one step further, right? Instead of using a default hard-coded string here, well, we can just go and be like, well, okay, cool. Let's read from a different environment variable. In this case, let's just call it project name. And we'll do the same pattern as before with an empty variable here as a default here. And if we would try to run this one here, it's going to say, hey here, and if you try to run it like this, then it's going to be our empty variable here. There's nothing there. However, we can now do something like project name, and this will be cool. And then you can see here, it is going to use that. And if you happen to set both, then this one is going to win here because the argument is going to be read first. This will not be undefined, so this $1 value will be used, so we can get hey here. And now we just need to repeat this pattern basically one more time. In this case, it's going to get the current working directory. But instead of running, something like getting a variable, just like, we could technically do something like this, right? And that would work, in the sense that it will actually work. It's not going to give us the desired result that we want here, but if we just run the demo script like this, then we can see we get the entire path here, and that's probably not what we want, right? We want arg values here. So we just need to replace this a little bit and just run actually a subshell here, and we can just do base name on pwd here, and we'll quote this as well. And then if we do this, then if you run this one, it should give us what we want, which would be arg values. But just going back to what we did before here, again, if we define all these things here, it is going to use hey. But if we don't have hey here, then it's going to use cool, which is going going to be the environment variable. And then of course, if neither of them are defined, then it defaults back to arg values. And that's basically it here. Now, you might read this and be like, well, maybe that's a little bit hard to read. There's really only 3 different possibilities here. But, in this case, using base name is pretty easy. It's just a function call on, some string here, the current working directory. Maybe your example is a little bit more complicated and you would like to break this out into multiple lines. So we can totally do that as well. For example, we can have project name equals nothing for now. And then what we could do is be like, well, if a variable is defined, in this case, it is going to be $1, then we can be like, okay, that's cool. We can do our then here. Whoops, forgot the closing quote there. And then, we can do something like, project name equals $1. In this case, it's always going to be defined. We don't need to fall back to using any default here because we know if $1 is defined, then we can read from it. And then we can just do an else if here, and then we can do basically the same thing here in this case, but instead of $1, it is going to be project name, and we can set an empty default there, and then we can do our then in this case. And in this case, project name is going to be project name. That's good. And then the last condition here, and I'll do the end if as well. This is going to fall back to using our subshell like we did before, where we can just do something like base name here, and then the base name is going to be the PWD. And then if I can close everything correctly here, probably this is going to work here. Let's just comment out the first line here to make sure that things are still working. And then we do have this echo statement down here as well. So let's try it again here. So this should give us cool because, we have the environment variable set. And then if we don't set that, but instead we set the first argument, we get hey. And then we can also go with nothing here at all. And then that should default to arg values just like it does. So, this is a more of a verbose or, long form way of writing the same thing here. If I were to do this in a script of my own, I would certainly choose the first version here because as it currently stands, this is not crazy complicated. There's only 2 or 3 variables here, a one-liner here to run a subshell. If it got a little bit longer, if there was maybe 4 of them, or maybe I had to do a whole bunch of logic here and I didn't extract this out into a function, then maybe I would reach for doing this one as well. Yeah, that's going to be it for this one. If you have any questions, let me know in the comments below. I'll do my best to answer all of them. And yeah, let us know when was the last time you did this type of pattern, like what type of tool were you writing. And with that said, if you liked the video, please give a thumbs up. It really does help a lot. Thanks a lot for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.